a problem with some of the people that are joining us remotely. Is everything okay? Can you all hear us fine? Great stuff.
Yeah.
Loads of thumbs up, good. And now ask Lynn to call for the sediment.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Councillor Reid.
Here.
Councillor McMahon.
Yeah, Lynn, thanks.
Councillor McFadden.
Here, good morning.
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Linton.
Yeah.
Councillor Barton.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, Lynn.
Councillor Ingram.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Maitland. Here. Councillor Mabin.
Here, thanks, Lynn.
And we have an apology this morning from Councillor Filson. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I now go on to item 2, which is a new Community Wealth Building Scotland Bill. And David. Oh, sorry, declaration of interest. Thanks, Barry. Barry would like to declare an interest.
Thank you, Leader. Just to note that at item 3, both myself and yourself are the council reps on the neighbourhood board, but I don't think it's a significant interest that wouldn't allow us to take part, allow me to take part certainly in the determination.
Okay. Right. Well, I likewise meant to declare that I'm on the board, but I'll take part in the meeting, I think. In terms of the significance. David, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with an update and introduction of the new Community Wealth Building Scotland Bill, including the new duties that will be placed upon local authorities, and to seek approval of the Council's response to the Scottish Government's call for views. Ayrshire, as you are aware, is recognised as a leading region in Scotland in terms of taking a community wealth building approach to local economic development. This is demonstrated by the activities of the Pan-Ayrshire Community Wealth Building Commission, which is a delivery vehicle for the progressing and promoting the development of a collaborative approach to community wealth building in our region. The Council is an active participant in the work of the Community Wealth Building Commission. Community wealth building goals and principles are embedded in the strategic focus of East Ayrshire Community Planning Partnership, and this is expressed most clearly via the 24 to 27 Economy and Skills Delivery Plan. The Council's strategic plan also gives voice to our community wealth building aspirations across all of its main themes. Paragraphs 3 through to 7 sets out the background to Scottish Government's community wealth building agenda, which aligns with our own economic development delivery, which has been implemented over the last 4 years as part of the Ayrshire Growth Deal by focusing on 5 pillars for harnessing existing resources to support local economy, all via procurement, employment, land and assets, financial power, plural ownership of the economy, and, as members will be aware, climate action, which was introduced by the Pan-Ayrshire Community Wealth Building Commission to ensure proposed community wealth building actions align with the actions to be delivered under the Council's climate strategy. The 24-25 programme for government included a commitment to bring forward a community wealth building bill and to support development of legislation and provide oversight. The Scottish Government established the Community Wealth Building Bill Steering Group, and to further support development of legislation, the Scottish Government then launched a public consultation on community wealth building in January 2023. Views and comments were sought on what future community wealth building legislation should look like and where existing law and policy could be changed to advance action on community wealth building. Over 180 responses were received. All responses were analysed in detail, and a full report of the findings of the consultation was published in autumn 2023. The Council submitted its response in April 2023, and a Pan-Ayrshire response was also submitted from the Community Wealth Building Commission. The Community Wealth Building Bill was introduced on the 20th of March 2025, and the bill sits within a wider suite of activity in support of community wealth building, including a review of procurement thresholds, figures relating to community wealth building benefits, a review of the Community Empowerment Act, the Land Reform Scotland Bill, an independent review of the inclusion of and democratic business models in Scotland. Paragraphs 8 through to 12 sets out the community wealth building statement and duty, and the bill requires Scottish ministers to prepare and publish a statement about community wealth building which sets out the measures to reduce economic and wealth inequality by facilitating and supporting generation, circulation and retention of wealth in local and regional economies. The bill also contains new duties on local authorities and relevant public bodies, which includes implementation of a community wealth building action plan within a period of 3 years from the date which the bill is approved by Parliament, having consulted with the relevant stakeholders. The action plan will set out the measures of the community wealth building that they're taking in terms of partnership or intends to take, and then there'll be a review of this action plan over a 5-year period. The measures are detailed in paragraph 11 in the report, and these are similar to what we currently have within our community wealth building policy and principles. And the timetable for progress of the bill is set out in paragraph 16, with an anticipated finalisation and approval prior to dissolution of the Parliament for the election on the 7th of May 2026. Paragraph 16 to 18 confirms that the Scottish Parliament's Fair Work and Economy Committee is conducting a stage 1 scrutiny of the Community Wealth Building Bill, and prior to the commencement of formal evidence sessions in June 2025, the committee has launched calls for views. The closing date for response to this exercise is the 23rd of May 2025, and the Council's response is attached at Appendix 1. Chair, the recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, David. Any questions, Linda?
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, David. Can I get some clarity on something, please? Paragraph 3, in relation to the background, right, you talk about anchor institutions. So I'm just looking for a wee bit of kind of definition and what the criteria would be for an anchor institution, what it's based on, and any examples, any local ones.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Obviously, the anchor institutions are obviously local authorities, the Ayrshire College, University of West of Scotland, NHS. So that's the kind of primarily the high level ones, and then it can be developed down to other kind of partnership agencies and third sector. So there could be, when we looked at community wealth building through the commission, we included those partners and other partners such as the third sector as well.
Well, back in, Linda.
Aye, thanks. So is there a specific criteria for, say, the likes of, you're talking about third sector, would they have to meet a criteria to qualify to be an anchor institution? Like, do they have to provide a specific service or have X amount of staff or anything like that?
That from recollection isn't defined per se, but it's normally looking at kind of groups that look after and a number of different third sector organisations. So I'm just thinking of the Community Wealth Building Commission's perspective. There's a number throughout the region that we have that kind of look to support third sector at grassroots level as an overarching type of group.
So what third sector ones are there? Are there any local third sector that are already classed as anchors?
Well, we'd look to the likes of the CVO and other groups like that. Yeah.
Jim?
Thanks, David. I'm glad that we picked up on the response to what extent small businesses will benefit from this. I know you point out that we are a living wage and fair work for the council, but there are small businesses out there that will struggle during this cost of living crisis to be able to accommodate that. And I'm glad to see that we're looking for probably exceptions to that, where that living wage can be paid due to the constraints on the small business. But I think as a council, in our last paper that came to Cabinet when about procurement, we saw that community wealth building really put into practice in East Ayrshire, and not just East Ayrshire, but our close neighbours to north and south, where we spent, I think it was in the region of £65.5 million in local businesses to benefit I think it was 320 something, local businesses. So glad to see that as part of the bill. And again, the Ayrshires were at the forefront of the community wealth building right at the very start of this.
We'll just come back in on that through you, Chair. I mean, the work that David's team does in terms of procurement, it was supported by economic development. So what we do is we work with businesses at a local level, help them through the Be Ready programme so that they're procurement enabled, so that they can then start to grow themselves to a point where they can be on the kind of tender process.
That's David. Barry.
Thank you, Leader. Just, I do note throughout the paper in terms of the responses that we are mentioning throughout the need for consistency. I think that is absolutely important, but I do get that it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach, and I'm glad that we have noted that. In terms of funding is always going to be a key issue for us in terms of delivering this, and that is mentioned throughout as well in terms of the potential impacts that could have. But what I really wanted to know was in terms of Section 7 in the responses, in terms of support, shortening the supply chains. I think maybe just give us an example of that, and going on, building on what the Deputy Leader has already said in terms of what SMEs need is probably certainty, not uncertainty, and anything that softens the language around some of the terms is also welcome too. So I just thought, whilst welcoming the response and absolutely welcoming our commitment to community wealth building, it was more if you can give me some example around shortening the supply chains and how that would benefit.
So in terms of some of the work that we're doing, maybe an example from the food and drink sector, it's working with food and drink businesses to try to ensure that they have the right skill set. So we're working at a regional level to identify where the skill shortages are. We're looking at how those businesses, we can grow those businesses and where the gaps are. And I mentioned from an East Ayrshire perspective, we have a range of different support mechanisms, whether it's one-to-one, support from advisors, or it's through the various programmes that we have to support those businesses. But we are looking at the kind of supply chain and to see where those businesses fit into that, and then to understand where we can grow that business and then help them to be in that position to move from maybe local sales to more regional sales, where they're actually growing and being able to take on more staff to accommodate that growth.
Just to supplement that and going back to one of the earlier pieces, as David said, what procurement and economic development colleagues do is support our local businesses to access public sector work. That's what we know, that's what we do, that's what we manage. The public sector contracts portal set up for that kind of business. We focus on, I know this is about community wealth building, but then we tend to focus on developer contributions and community benefits from all the wind farm developments. We just had a very interesting conversation with one of those developers, I think it was just last Friday, and what we're looking to do, what they're looking to do, and it was their idea, set up a developer forum. What they've identified is before you get the turbines turning and you get the flow of benefits at 7,500 whatever thousand per megawatt, there's an estimated £1 billion of construction on all the different wind farms that are due or are planned or are still to come. And what they're looking to do is set up a developer forum to actually harness as much of that back to supply chains, etc., and actually us support that by turning what we have in place to deal with public sector work to actually support them to get in the room with businesses to try and make sure that as much of that £1 billion spend goes local. And that's at their behest. That's get the suppliers in, get the contractors in, let them know what's coming, plan ahead, and actually to engage with them rather than just each developer putting a construction tender out there and getting somebody from any part of the country. So that came for them, and that's something we were keen to work with. It builds on established approach, established arrangements and processes, but it opens up a whole new area whereby local businesses can be directed to some of that private sector work. and harness as much of that billion into the economy to build the developments before we start to then receive, manage and spend to best effect the developer contributions or the community benefits that then flow from the operations. So that's a big one, and that, as I said, was initiated by them, but it's something we're more than happy to work with them with. So there's an opportunity there to harness as much of that, and it's those kind of examples and it's that kind of thinking that we need to bring to bear to try and keep, and we keep saying it, and it's true, and the outcome and how you achieve it changes depending on the situation, but the overall mission is to generate as much spend and retain as much spend in the local economy as we can.
Yeah, and maybe if I can come back in just in the back of that, just to kind of further answer your question, Councillor. It's identifying from these businesses what is their need, you know, what is the need, and for we can look at, I'm not going to name the company just in the public domain, but we have built there's a small company that's growing and growing and growing that deals with all the foundations for all the infrastructure for. It started off with the pylons and they grew, and then we supported them, and they're now delivering all that for the wind turbines as well. So that's a local company that is flourished through that you know, that growth. So it is looking about what is the need and then trying to capitalise on that. So I don't know if there's anything else.
No, I think that was really useful, and thank you, David, to both Davids for expanding on that in terms of the example. I think if there is something you can maybe provide members offline just to give a kind of more detail as to here's what we've done or here's how it's been done, that'd be useful. But I get in the public domain that perhaps commercial sensitivity around that. But thank you.
I think I'm just my inbox just yesterday. I think we've got a requirement to provide a members briefing on this, a conversation on it. So take that away. Thanks, Chair.
I suppose it emphasises the point, the need for networking. It's not just a kind of fluffy thing. You know, it's real of tangible benefit. And I know that certainly been out with visits with Chief Executive and Deputy and others, and yourself, David, and we don't miss an opportunity to send folk in the right direction. You know, I know we've done that several times. Eddie?
Thanks, Leader. And I suppose it brings forward one of the wider projects of some of the work that David's been doing through the Ayrshire Growth Deal. This has been one of the revenue projects through the Ayrshire Growth Deal that's only got time-limited money. And if they actually see it as good value, well, how do we mainstream that within the main business? And I think that's part of the discussion that we were going to have locally. Clearly, this is a national conversation, but locally, we've been doing this work, you know, through the Growth Deal. And if we think of the value in it, then how do we mainstream it? It's a big question for us.
Thanks, Eddie. Graham?
Thanks, Eddie's just said half of what I was about to say there. I said, so overall, it's a good response, but looking at question 2, I'm glad to see we're thinking about that kind of regional action plan, especially given the work that's going on with the Ayrshire Growth Deal, how we complement that. I mean, we look, it's already been mentioned, and how the council's corporate procurement strategy, with that focus on community wealth building, the benefits of that, we see that 11% increase year on year, with some 43.5 million being spent locally into the local economy in East Ayrshire. So look forward to this bill going through Parliament. Thanks.
Thanks, Graham. Okay, so for a fair listen to that, fair conversation about that, very, very worthwhile. Can we agree the recommendations? Okay, can I go to item 3 then? That's the negotiated contract between East Ayrshire Council and Centre Stage Communities Limited, delivery of Kilmarnock Fair Festival on behalf of Kilmarnock Neighbourhood Board. Karen.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for East Ayrshire Council to enter into a negotiated contract with Centre Stage Communities Limited to deliver the Kilmarnock Fair Festival on June the 28th this year on behalf of Kilmarnock Neighbourhood Board and in accordance with the Council's standing orders relating to contracts. As set out in paragraph 3, the UK Government published its long-term plan for towns prospectus on the 1st of October 2023. Kilmarnock was selected to receive a 20 million endowment-style fund to invest over the following 10 years. Utilising some of the capacity funding from financial year 24-25 provided via the long-term plan for towns, the Kilmarnock Fair Festival was held on the 29th of June 2024. And the purpose of this event was to engage, raise awareness and provide a fun, inclusive event to build connections, community spirit and pride in Kilmarnock. Following the UK parliamentary election in July 24, the Labour government refreshed the approach to regeneration and amended the fund to the Plan for Neighbourhoods. A revised prospectus was issued in March this year, setting out the 3 strategic objectives of the programme, namely thriving places, stronger communities and taking back control. A separate report will be presented to Council on the Plan for Neighbourhoods. In line with the new prospectus, delivery funding will be released from the beginning of 26-27, affording communities the time and space to embed the necessary governance structure, grow their presence within the local area and build local capacity and capability to be ready to hit the ground running. To facilitate this, an additional £200,000 of capacity funding is being released for 25-26. Local authorities are required to consult the Neighbourhood Board on their preference for using this money. The board agreed on the 10th of April 2025 at their board meeting that they wish to use up to £60,000 of this money to deliver a further Kilmarnock Fair Festival to allow further community engagement to inform the regeneration plan, which is due for submission in winter this year, and have submitted this request to the Council. Due to the prospectus for the Plan for Neighbourhoods only having been published in March and the requirement for a revised plan to be submitted in winter 2025, it's not been possible to accommodate an event within the preferred procurement timescales. On this basis, a negotiated contract is sought with Centre Stage Communities Limited to allow the event to take place. Notwithstanding, it should be noted that work is ongoing to establish and agree the procurement workload associated with the programme. The recommendations of the report are set out in paragraph 2, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. Just maybe I can't know this just about the process, but just to put a marker down there, I think from previous events, it's not entirely local businesses, just after discussion about community wealth building, that's benefited from some of these activities that we point. We want to see a maximisation use of local business where we can, so that there can be that benefit that we always try to practice through community wealth building. Anyone else? Elaine?
Thanks, Chair. I was initially surprised to see this paper brought through to Cabinet because I wasn't really sure what our role was. My understanding when the town boards were set up, they were to be autonomous with limited local authority input, so that's why it surprised me. But I was listening there to what Karen said, and she's explained that the revised plan was only published in March, so obviously there's a wee bit of shift in the landscapes with the new government that came into place last year. So, and also note point 5 in the report, there's to be a second report to Council on the plan for neighbourhoods prior to the recess. So hopefully we'll get some more detail there. I was wondering whether that would also include our own Council's internal work with the Urban Alliance. How does the work of this new board fit in with that? I'm assuming that it's no longer the Kilmarnock Town Board, it's now going to be referred to as the Kilmarnock Neighbourhood Board, and locally that's been branded as We Make Kilmarnock. So again, it'd be good just to know how things are shifting and get all that confirmed. Point 6 is mentioning that the 200k is subject to approval, so I'm just wondering, do we have a time frame on that approval, and how does that fit with the 60k spend that we're being asked to approve today? And I agree with your comments about making sure we use some local companies where we can, but also we do a lot of, over the years we've done a lot of these kind of activities. It would be good to build in some legacy work as well, so they're not just one-off events where we've spent a lot of money and everybody's had a great day, but can it be built into some kind of local calendar? And perhaps that's maybe a fit with the new Leisure Trust as well. So it's just, how do we join up all these activities to get the maximum output for our communities? Sorry, I realised that was a lot there. So the specific question was the decision on the time frame for the 200k and clarity on Cabinet's role going forward with this new process. Assuming, of course, that detail's been published in March. Thank you.
Actually, no, I totally agree with your point in terms of legacy work. I think we've got to learn, that one-off money, just if we can get something, it's part of the cultural diary or whatever. Just I think there's great benefits there. Karen,
Yep. Thanks, Chair. Right, I'll try and kind of go through all the points. So in terms of the relationship between the council and the neighbourhood board, the new prospectus sets out that it's a partnership between the local authority and the neighbourhood board and the communities. And we are also there. Our chief financial officer provides assurance around about the spend of funds. So we do have that linkage whereby we're bound to make sure that the funds have been spent correctly in line with the Nolan principles. So that's our kind of linkage there. Yes, you're correct. It would now be called the Neighbourhood Board rather than the Town Board, and that's a rebranding as part of the new prospectus. And yes, the board brands themselves as We Make Kilmarnock. In terms of the £200,000 approval, essentially what we were asked to do for the 22nd of April was to submit any changes to the board and any changes to the boundary that they would like to spend the money within. That gets submitted on the 22nd of April. We've had some general feedback from the UK government, not specific to East Ayrshire Council, just to say that they're working through all of that. We don't anticipate there'll be any issue with that. The board do still have in the region of £50,000 left to spend from the previous amount of capacity funding. So there's a kind of, I think, kind of minimal risk there in terms of the 200k being approved versus how much they've still got to spend at the moment. However, we are expecting to hear about the 200k approval before any money would actually be spent on the Fair Festival. Certainly in terms of the legacy work, one of the things I think we've been talking about has been, the kind of events calendar for East Ayrshire and looking at how this fits in with that. And I know that the board have been doing some work with the Leisure Trust on that. And I think in terms of legacy, certainly there has to be a monitoring and evaluation process as part of the plan. So again, that will be something that comes into place to look at the effectiveness of these events, and if we're rolling them forward, that there is a purpose and it's actually achieving something out of it. I think I've answered everything, but let me know if there's anything you want me to keep picking up on. Oh, in terms of the council report, council account, yes, when we come to council to talk about the neighbourhood board, we'll wrap in around about the strategic group and the alliances and all the different work that we're doing around Kilmarnock with the officer task force group as well. Thanks.
Thanks, thanks, Karen. That's really helpful. Just a couple of things, just a couple of observations. I couldn't make the last town centre board, but I had concerns in terms of the boundary. I couldn't understand. I think it was quite correct that Hurlford was kept within the boundary, but similarly I couldn't understand why Chris House had been kept out, because I think there's very much similarity there between Hurlford and Chris House. And I've still to receive, in my opinion, a satisfactory reason why that isn't the case. And I'll continue to press that, because I think it's basically unfair unless I get evidence or suggestions that otherwise. So just maybe put that out there. There's, I think to mention, we've got a visit from the UK Government Minister, Alan Norris, this afternoon, and we'll be able to discuss some of this with him at that place and hopefully make some progress in terms of getting this whole thing established and getting out helping our neighbourhoods right across Kilmarnock. Anyone else? Barry?
Thanks. I think most of maybe what I brought in has been covered, but in terms of the rebranding, I mean, it's still We Make Kilmarnock. I think that's fairly clear. I think calling it a neighbourhood board is probably a better reflection of the reality. It's not just the town centre, and that sometimes can be people's perception. The town board was just about the town centre, when it really isn't. It's about that wider community. And of course, I'm delighted to see Hurlford and Crooked Home included in that as well, given the representatives from, as part of the Alliance, the East Alliance, include Hurlford and Crooked Home, and they've been quite involved in the process. There were explanations given around Cross House, and that was relative to rural area funding. But again, I would welcome some further clarity on that to make sure people are aware. What the board did, certainly at the last meeting, and I'm more than happy to share that, obviously noting that the leader wasn't present, was that we have reserved the right as a board to allow them to look again at the boundaries should we wish to do so. But I do note that obviously we need further approval from the government in that regard. Ultimately, the £50,000 that's left over would absolutely pay for most of this £60,000 spend. And I do think we'll have confirmation soon, but as the leader rightly says, there's an opportunity for myself and the leader to take this afternoon to push the Minister in terms of progress. And I think it is good to see that the UK Government Minister is here today to actually find out what's happening here in Kilmarnock, and if indeed our proposals are to be looked at as an exemplar, as I hope they are, that hopefully that will allow us to make some progress quickly, because I do know other authorities or other boards, didn't take the opportunity to submit their papers when at the time the government had suggested that there might be a period of time to hold off. The We Make Kilmarnock board went forward with their proposals, and I think that's been welcomed, certainly from what I hear from the UK government. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, and we've been doing everything we can to support that through that process. That's okay. Anyone else want to comment? Can we go to recommendations on page 14? Can we agree recommendations? Okay. Next item. 10:30. I'm moving the exclusion of press and public already. Can we move? Agreed. And go to a final item, which is a proposed contract cyber incident response service. Paul.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Could IT colleagues stop recording, please?
Excellent. I hope Paul's not going to use bad language here.